The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to Voice and Data Network seminar supporting the growth trend of mobility and the discussion on what is bring your own device really. If anyone has spent any time of late in an airport or has noticed in the workplace the influx of iPads and Androids, you at least have a taste of the magnitude of the topic and the potential for problems. If I'll take a moment here to just do a brief introduction on voice and data networks, and then I'll step promptly into introducing our speaker for this morning, Jim Sevier, and then we'll step right into the presentation itself, so as to allow ample time for questions and discussion. Voice and Data Networks, founded in 1994, is a multifaceted business focusing on communications and bringing communications efficiencies to our customers, both in terms of Avaya solutions and a robust consulting and services practice. So not only do we support Avaya, but offer solutions from Maru, Call Copy, Juniper, Plantronics, Mutari, and Microsoft. We have a large stable of clients: Best Buy, Farm Bureau, Kohler, Chesapeake Energy, White Castle, General Electric, and so on. It have a lot of experience in assessing people's communication needs and helping them make educated, informed decisions about how to move their business forward, with our overarching goal to be returning profitability and efficiencies to our customers. Just a brief overview on the speaker for today. I'd like to introduce Jim Sevier, the founder and CEO of Convergence Readiness, Inc. Mr. Sevier regularly speaks with the goal of bridging the gap between technology value and business value. He has accomplished this through the development and delivery of high-impact converged communication content, education, and advice. He has a proven track record of providing engaging and relevant technology education. An accomplished speaker and technologist, Mr. Sevier has delivered presentations to Intel's Gordon Moore, the Ministry of Industrial Development for the Korean White House, and to the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Jim has also delivered numerous keynote addresses on subjects like technology futures, network neutrality, and next-generation communications cost justification models. Please welcome Jim Sevier. Jim?
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to this event. We've got a lot of content to cover today. We've got some pretty interesting concepts and some thought leadership that I think is going to address some of the needs regarding bringing your own device, or BYOD. And you know, we hear a lot about BYOD. There's a lot of conversation inside the internet, blogs and articles that are being written about it. And when Voice and Data Networks and I got together on this topic, one of the things that I was really pleased to see was this, this whole recognition that there's just a huge amount of complexity and a huge amount of movement in technology, and we're gonna address not just the element of BYOD, not just the direction that BYOD is taking, but how is the best way for companies to address the significance of mobile technology. And I'm going to probably talk about that at great lengths, because I think it's important that we establish a baseline as to what is really the impact of BYOD. What is BYOD really? I mean, is it, what is it impact-wise to business? And is it a trend? Is it a fashion? Is it going to go away? Right? Are we going to now focus on something else? Is it here to stay, kind of thing? So we're going to talk about those elements, as well as some of the technological components. And again, at the end of this, hopefully we can come to some conclusions about BYOD and offer up some value statements that voice and data can bring to the table for you, and sort of just look at this problem holistically from what the technology does, what the value statements are, and then ultimately how do we solve some of the problems moving forward. So thank you again for being here, and you know, I think one of the first things I'm going to just jump into is just talk about the definition of BYOD. You know what, it's sort of a catchy little play on words, right? We all know, right? BYOB and you know, all the other sort of catchiness that's associated to this. And I think part of the catchiness is what made BYOD sort of interesting, right? When you start about bringing your own device to your office, when you think about that comment or that element, that's not new. It's not new that we're bringing these devices to work. What's new is that the devices that we're bringing to work are more intelligent than they've been in the past. So it's, you know, we've all read email on our cell phones for quite a long time, right? So it's not that, you know, it's not that BYOD is anything really new, right? But is it an electronic device trend? Is it being pushed on us by electronic device manufacturers? Is it a changing business paradigm? Is business becoming more mobile? Or is it just again, a blip on the radar, right? Now, I have a few people. I'm a futurist, and I talk about technology a lot in a lot of different groups that I belong to. You know, there's this prevalent thought that this is just basic marketing, that we're basically here to, you know, utilize these tools and get into some sort of an upgrade stream. Now, you know, I don't know if I agree with it. In fact, I don't. But that idea is out there. If you'll notice, especially with wireless technologies, you upgrade those devices much quicker than any of the other technologies that you use in business. And I think that that's a key point that we need to be aware of as we're looking at the strategy that we choose to deploy a solution to support mobility in our business. Is it a way to track my purchases and my movement? I mean, every cell phone since the OJ times has had a GPS solution built into it, a GPS element built into it. Again, a little bit of conspiracy theories here, but if we look at the ability of tracking, you know, there's entire industries that support tracking. You know, if you're in the trucking industry, if you're UPS, if you're FedEx, guess what? You know, when you're in logistics, tracking is actually not a negative element. It's actually a very positive element. So if you have any element of your business that tracks shipments, tracks elements being moved, BYOD actually makes sense to you. If you look at it from, big government looking down on me, right, and can see wherever I'm at, or retailers can track my purchases and my movements. If you look at it from that perspective, it could be negative, but that's why we're going to talk about an element of BYOD that not a lot of people are talking about, and that's called identity management. So we're going to talk about that too. Is it a business efficiency strategy? Should you deploy BYOD as a strategy and add it to your strategic IT technology plan, right? And how do you do that? Because I'll be honest with you, most of the IT plans that I come across in my practice, month over month, most of the technology plans just account for the infrastructure, not the device. So I'm going to leave you with that little thought, that little nugget. Most of the ones I come across, most of the IT plans I come across have a wireless strategy that's usually like buried inside of the infrastructure strategy. So it's like it's not even its own element, yet it has such a big impact to business, it needs to be pulled out and become its own strategy. So that's an interesting comment. And quite honestly, I'd like you to pay attention to that one too. If you have an IT strategy document, a legitimate IT strategy document that you use and manage to making your decisions against, I would ask you to go back into that document and actually see whether or not you have a separate wireless strategy that not only includes the infrastructure, that it not only includes the devices, but that it also includes a strategy for home operation, or let's call it out-of-office operation. So do you have a policy, an HR policy, for how items and elements are handled out in public? right? Because you're basically exposing business intelligence wherever you happen to be. When you're outside of the brick and mortar, you actually are exposing your business intelligence to somebody who could just be sitting next to you. And I know we've had those conversations in Starbucks, right, where we've been on the road and we've taken a conference call from Starbucks while we've been sitting there, and you know what, you're sort of exposing some of that information to outsiders. And what happens when this mobile device, which is very easy to misplace, what happens to it when it gets misplaced, right? Wiping technologies, you know, where you can actually remotely wipe a device. You know, how much of information is actually stored on your mobile device? And that really boils down to that next thing. If you look at BYOD from a security perspective, a risk mitigation perspective, I know that a lot of IT departments would much rather just not allow those devices than have to deal with the security. And we're going to talk about that element as well significantly, because there is a movement underway to move away from just network access control, you know, put in your username and your password, but actually also do identity management. And we'll talk about the difference between identity management and network access control. You know what? It has been around. Yeah, BYOD has been around a long time. Some of the first wireless networks were installed probably back in the, I don't know, mid-90s, mid to late 90s. I think is one of the first ones that came in. I'll have to go back into my data banks here to try to remember when I first saw wireless technologies. They actually were designed, first of all, for voice communications. There was actually wireless decked telephones and that type of technologies, or what's an enabling technology that brought us to where we are with Wi-Fi. But it's definitely been around for many, many years. And again, you've been reading your emails on your cell phone for quite a long time, and no one back then, you know, coined the phrase BYOD, right? Even though we were doing it, it only became BYOD when the things that we were using became smarter than or equal to as smart as those devices that we had in the enterprise. So when we look at what BYOD is, you can see that BYOD is really, it's a catchy phrase, but it actually impacts a lot of different areas in business. And it's not something that you can simply just say, well, I've got a new Wi-Fi network, therefore I can support BYOD. Infrastructure is the easiest component to deliver for BYOD, and even that has a significant amount of complexity to it. So once we get into processes, once we get into security, once we get into traffic, tracking, RFID tagging, I mean, all kinds of really interesting things that we can do with this technology. You're going to see that BYOD is a bigger element, that there's a lot more to it. There is a lot of chaos, but in chaos there's opportunity. And we're going to talk about the opportunity that's available for companies that are willing to spend the time to work with a partner, to work with a value-added partner that actually understands what the impact can be. So that's hopefully what we're going to get through today. You know, so you know, there's always, you know, I want to substantiate what we're talking about here today. I really want to substantiate what we're talking about. None of these specs on none of these statistics on this slide should cause you any sort of alarm. Everyone knows that the tablet markets, the Android, iPhone operating systems, the smart devices, social media usage, all that is on the rise. It is rising faster than any other trend that we've seen in the internet to date, including connectivity. Connectivity was an interesting trend back in the early 80s and 90s, and it was a very fast-growing trend. But this is dwarfing it by a magnitude of like 8 times. Because in connectivity, we were just focused in business on connectivity. In the BYOD market, it hits both our personal and professional lives. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons why BYOD has sort of bubbled up to the top and as quickly as it's done, because it really started hitting maybe less than a year and a half ago, which we were already behind the 8 ball back then. And when you look at the marketplaces, when you look at tablets and their significance in driving business and being productive, and you look at the amount of consumer applications that are out there and the amount of revenue that these companies are getting from smart devices, whether that smartphone is a smart cell phone or a tablet, or you can begin to see the reason why Time took the time to actually place you as the person of the year in their Time magazine article, and you meaning your world, because now we're in the process where we can create our own worlds, mobile-wise. We can take our world with us, and that is something that hasn't been a capability ever in business or in our personal careers. You had something, you did something at home, and then you did something at work. Well, now I can do something for home at work, and I can do something for work at home. And that paradigm shift is a challenge to business leaders, not only technologically for IT people, but from a business perspective and from an HR perspective, it places some significant burden on a business, both from a risk perspective as well financially, and then from a business intelligence perspective. So we're going to talk a lot about that. You know what? It used to be a one user, one device world. One person equals one computer. That's the way the network had been designed up until a few years ago. And now it's 2.5 devices per user. So you can't just come to the table with a design that says, I've got 500 people in the office, I need 500 licenses. You can't do that anymore, because you're going to have multiple licenses. You're going to have people with multiple devices. And immediately what you get is an increase in the amount of support required for those. So I was supporting maybe 200 telephones and 200 computers. And now I've got a cell phone and a tablet. So technically I'm at 4 devices. On average it's 2.5, but in reality in some tech-heavy environments like sales, you've got 4 devices that IT needs to manage. And by the way, you don't have 4 times the headcount to manage those environments. You probably don't already have enough people to support the environment of 2, and now the environment is 2.5, and maybe 3 or 4. So when you consider that there's multiple operating systems, you've got more manufacturers involved in this deal. Now it's not just not Microsoft. Plus, you can't always assume that people are where you think they are. Right? They could be anywhere in the network. So you've now got this issue where do you put your tech support? Do you put them in headquarters? Do you put them, how do we know that those people that are using those licenses are actually inside a brick and mortar? And that's ultimately what the business of identity management gets into, is actually not just understanding how you're connected, but where you're connected. And tracking is an important part to this. And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but I think that we've got to get past the fact that people know where we're at, and we've got to start embracing a new order of business that says it's okay for people to know where I'm at. All right, so we're going to talk about that a lot, but again, 2.5 devices per user is an average now, and we've all been designing our networks for the last 50 years on one device, one user. And that's the first thing that's got to change. So if you're going to make a note today, if you're going to say anything today, please, take that into direct account as you start looking at your budgets for next year, because it's no longer a one user, one license world. I'm going to be putting on SAP Oracle licenses onto iPads. Get over it. We're going to have to do it. We're going to have the capability of storing business intelligence from smart devices. And again, these things are going to take licenses. So, and at the very least, they're going to take additional support to ensure that the client software is installed and the like. So we've got to look at this idea of BYOD as something more than just, yeah, I've got to make sure that that I can get connectivity. All right. So look, I talk about BYO anything, right? BYOA anything, right? It's not just bring my own device. There's obviously a lot of technology associated with mobility, but you'd be surprised to know that that BYOD is actually altering marketing and advertising in the United States and abroad, worldwide. It's changing. And again, this is no surprise. I'm not really saying anything unique here, other than just reminding you the fact that BYOD is becoming a significant marketing tool, and that marketing is evolving at a fast pace. So if your business is marketing, if you're on this call and you're supporting an organization that does a significant amount of marketing, just realize that the order of magnitude of complexity just got even greater for you, because now there's going to be not just connectivity required, but there's going to be interaction between devices, applications, locations, and business processes, right? And again, I think the whole idea here is that advertisers see this opportunity with BYOD. So let me take the word advertiser out there. And again, if we look at this from a logistics perspective, if any part of your business involves logistics, you need to know where things are and what is being seen. You've got to be known. That information has to be a part of your business. And sometimes you have to give that information to your customer, your consumer. And again, that's where BYOD becomes, I think, a little bit more complex for end users, because it's not just a problem of connectivity now. It's the element, and I don't want to get too technical, but the element's called federation. If I'm going to give information and information about where I am and what I'm doing outside of the brick and mortar network that I've created, and I want to hand it to another company, that's called federation. And we're doing it today. And we're doing it with Facebook and Twitter. I mean, if you look at when they ask you permission to access information, look at the information that they're asking for. They almost always ask for your location. And again, I don't know that I would put too much conspiracy theory in there. I would just say, look, it's a natural evolution of marketing, right? So if we look at it from that perspective, that this is that there's a generation that's coming into the workforce, that this is just the way that they consider normal operation to be, then we've got to look at BYOD from a different perspective. It's, again, not just connectivity, but there's maybe some tracking and reporting and some logging in and some identity management that we need to do. And that's ultimately it: support, control, and management. I mean, it isn't that it's here. It's how we deal with it. And what strategy do we put into place? Do we put in a strategy that says we're not going to deal with it? I mean, that's a strategy too, by the way. And that, hey, I'm not going to allow it. That's just too much for me to think of right now. But eventually, you're going to have to play in this game. This is not a game where you're going to be able to sit on the sidelines and just say, I'm sorry, we just don't allow it. You can get your email, but that's it. Because I can work around your security very easily. I can have you email me a PowerPoint presentation instead of logging into a server and downloading it. So there's a lot of ways information can leak out via email. And again, if that information is important, which it always is, then we've got to find a way to support and to control it and to manage it. All right. So I think we just got to look at this problem a little bit bigger than just, hey, how do I get my iPad connected to my office? So if you look at, again, some of the statistics, right, they're looking at, in just a few short years, that the wireless networks that we have will be obsolete. And the reason for that has to do with a strategy, with a plan. Most wireless networks were installed after the fact. Most people don't, when they build a new building, build wireless and then add wired to it. They always build a wired network first, and then they add wireless overlay on top of the wired network. So I have now two networks. Well, didn't we just go through this whole process of trying to converge all the networks into one network? And yet, now I've got two physically different networks. I've got a wireless network and I've got a wired network. And I've got a wireless management platform and a wired management platform. I mean, if you look at the total complete solution from a holistic perspective, there should be one network that supports both wireless devices and wired devices. I mean, ultimately, that's the game. That's the end game. And if we don't design around that, if we don't plan for that, then every time we install, by the time we end up installing a wireless network, it is completely obsolete, even by the time we get it installed. In fact, if you look at some of the specifications for wireless technologies, they're producing new specs in the IEEE faster for wireless than any other technology. And it's all to enhance speed and throughput. So we're going to talk about that, but just think about it. In the next couple of years, next 3 years, basically the networks that you're installing for your wireless network, for your wireless devices, are going to be obsolete. So we got to have a plan for that. You know, the iPad is a great tool. You know, we got to look at tablet technology as a business efficiency tool because it boots up instantaneously. I mean, for any other reason, I mean, whether or not you like tablets, whether you don't like tablets, it really doesn't matter, because what's good about a tablet-based device is that you push the button and it turns on immediately, and it doesn't take time for it to boot up and to run through all the operations that it does. So anytime that you have an efficiency like that, it's going to override that. If you've got another tool that, you know, takes a minute to boot up, 2 minutes to boot up, you think, well, that's not bad. I mean, come on, 2 minutes, that's not a long time to wait. Well, I would say that, but I just had a problem this morning with my Microsoft that decided to download the updates to and the security enhancements to Microsoft last night when I shut down. But when I came in this morning and I booted up my computer, I had to wait almost 10 minutes for almost 1,000 updates to happen to my PC, because that's what Microsoft does now. They install them before they open up the operating system the next time that these security updates are done. So my computer actually took me almost 5, 6, 7 minutes to boot up today. Now, if I was in a hurry and I had a customer on the line, 5, 6, 7 minutes means I've got a dissatisfied customer. And again, that's why these tablet devices are really so popular. They update themselves, and you pop them on, and you just hit that button, and they're on. And you can start using them. All right, so if you look at some of these stats, and again, some of these stats shouldn't be too surprising, but some of them were I think, still interesting of note, right? That users by next year, 70% of new users will be wireless by default. That's an interesting spec. That is an interesting play. I know that as a small business, when I'm at the office, I like to be wired in. But I do a lot of business on the road, and I'm wireless right now. And so it's an interesting stat. 72% of organizations permitting the use of employee-owned devices. Now, permitting, that's the interesting word here, permitting, allowing, but not having a structured policy in place. So when you look at BYOD, you've got to look at it from an HR perspective, because again, what happens if I'm using the device, the mobile device, and I'm traveling, and we've all seen these YouTube videos of people talking on their phones and then walking into a fountain of water, right? Just not paying attention and hitting bumping their heads on a sign because they were just too busy talking and not paying attention to what they were doing. You've got to have a plan for that, because if that was a business call and they get hurt, is that an HR violation? Is that something that you have to deal with from an HR perspective? Video soft clients. Video is one of the biggest applications, mobile applications that's out there. Now, it's not live point-to-point video, but it's still pretty decent in that it's still growing. Point-to-point video, FaceTime, if you will, or Skype and those types of things, that technology is growing very, very fast because they're improving the quality and reducing the amount of bandwidth necessary. And then, again, the cell phone companies are offloading to Wi-Fi networks and doing some things to allow you to do video. So look, wireless LANs, wireless local area networks, were really deployed for convenience, and they were not designed to support true wireless functionality. Real-time communication was never an idea for Wi-Fi. All Wi-Fi was to do was so that you could get connected if there wasn't a plug around you that you could plug into. And certainly high throughput wasn't an issue. It wasn't a consideration. All right. So let's jump into the first poll questions today. So I'm talking about BYOD. I'm talking about mobile devices. So what I'd like you guys to do is look at this question. and I'd like you to answer me. How many mobile devices are in use, do you believe are in use in your work? Either that you support or that you know exist in the network. So what I'd like you guys to do is take a second, reply to this poll. We're going to look at the answers here real quick and see where we sit as to how many mobile devices do you believe are connected in the network today. So go ahead and take the poll. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds here. And Patty, I'll give you a couple of minutes to throw some of the responses back to me. It shouldn't take us too long here. And by the way, while we're going through answering these poll questions, let me make a quick reminder. There's a chat panel on your screen where you can actually chat directly with me. If I'm making a statement or a comment that you would like additional clarification on, or if you've got a question to, feel free to throw your question inside that chat panel, and I'll address them when I'm going through the presentation. Sort of a nice way of raising your hand and getting things done. So looks like we've gotten the information, and I'm waiting. Patty, I don't see the results.
Jim, 65% answered up 100 plus, 25% 50 plus, and 10% answered 25 plus.
Wow. Look at that, 65%. The majority of people that are on this call have over 100 plus devices, mobile devices at work. Wow, that's pretty crazy. That's a big number. That's 100 more devices that you deal with than you were dealing with before. I mean, if you have 100 people in your office, you now have 200 devices, 300 devices if you consider mobile laptops, cellular devices, and tablets. Wow. That's actually a validation. I seem surprised, only for a little bit. Most user environments, and it looks like on this call that there's a lot of user environments that are, hang on a second here. There's a user environment here that you guys have a significant amount of end users in your network. So we're just magnifying that problem. Great. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna hold on to that data, and I'll pull that data into the next question when we get to the next poll question. So look, again, the challenges. When we look at wireless networks, if we look at wireless local area networks, you know, if we look at what the challenges are, right? Scalability is a big challenge. Scalability in wireless is a huge challenge. You think, oh, well, I need to just throw up some access points and I'm good. Well, the interesting thing about access points is that they downgrade to the slowest speed of the device that's talking to them. So if you've got a new state-of-the-art laptop with 802.11n, you know, high-speed connectivity, wireless connectivity, and you're connected to that access point, and then Jim Sevier walks in with a laptop that's like 7 years old that only has 802.11ab or AG, wow, then your 802.11 just became 802.11b. So you just got slowed because I'm slower on the network than you, and the AP can only go as fast as the slowest computer. And I'm laughing because I've been in so many organizations say, oh yeah, we just saw this latest and greatest, you know, infrastructure, scalable, it's future-proof, blah, blah, blah. And then I just said, okay, well, hang on a second. And I just drag out my old laptop, my old HP or IBM ThinkPad that's got an old wireless card into it, and I was like, okay, measure your performance now. And we have to account for the fact that not everyone has the latest technologies. So you have to design and to accommodate not only mobile traffic growth, but you've got to account for the fact that there's still older technologies out there. And one of the things about wireless access points is that they only go as fast as the slowest device. So if you've got an 802.11n computer right now on a wireless network, and there's somebody slower in your area that's on that access point, you're not going to be going as fast as you think you are. real-time support. Quality of service, especially for voice and video, is important. Right? Call admission control. The elements that provide quality of service for voice on Wi-Fi networks or wireless networks, yeah, you have to assume that there's going to be more going on than just sending emails across wireless networks. And if you consider that you should design for the worst case, then you've got to design for voice and video. And it's not necessarily a big fat pipe that you're looking for, it's security management control. Because a lot of these access points and controllers of access points have the ability to sort of assure that if you've got a whole bunch of devices and they're all running at the same speed, that they could also receive the same amount of equal bandwidth instead of somebody hogging the bandwidth that's closest to the radio. And we've got to start looking at efficiencies. These overlay networks are costing us a lot of money, and we've got to leverage virtualization. We've got to leverage and drive down cost because wireless networks are becoming very, very expensive amongst themselves. So if we look at these two elements, if we look at what we need when we're supporting BYOD, from a wireless perspective, obviously you need that 802.11 specification, and I call it alphabet soup, and you're going to see it in a minute when I show you the next slide. But we also need identity management. And identity management, let me define that really quickly. Identity management includes a number of different things. Identity management also is part of access control, so meaning I give you a username and a password. That's access control. But identity management also takes into account where you should be getting information from and not allowing you access to information that you're not supposed to have access to. So just because I'm in the network, just because I am wireless, just because I can, doesn't mean I should gain access to specific materials. So identity management is not only control, not only security, but it's also management. It also manages what you have access to, what you don't have access to. And quite honestly, you could create an identity management platform that says all you can do on your wireless device is email. All right, so it's important that you back that up with policy. And policy is either work from home, device wiping. There's a little YouTube thing, I think, out there. Maybe it's not YouTube. Maybe it was just an article. And now that I'm thinking about it, it was an article that was written up in, I think, either Network World or Mashable. But it talked about a CEO of a major corporation who put in a policy that says if you're away from the office and you lose your device, we immediately wipe the device, meaning everything, your personal pictures, any stored messages. I mean, it completely wipes the phone remotely. Well, guess what? He was on vacation with his family. He lost his phone, just misplaced it in the hotel. Without less than an hour went by after he noticed that it was gone. He talked to his IT department, says his phone was missing. They found the phone, and he turned it on, and there was nothing on it. And he was sitting there going, wow, great policy. I just lost everything that was on my phone. So you got to look at this from a perspective of risk management. Device wiping is a capability for all identity management platforms, and we just have to decide who and when and how we're going to apply it. But now that when I talk about the alphabet soup, I mean, you can look at this slide and you can really see what is involved and how many changes. By the way, there's, 5 years here? 3, 12, 10, 15 years here. 1997. Wow, boy, I need some more coffee. I had to do that math, and I'm, wow. Oh, man, I need some coffee. So there's 15 years here between when wireless came around and where we're at today. So we're looking at 10 years of from 802.11 all the way to what is now under consideration 802.11ac. So if you look at how the wireless technologies work, they overlap the frequencies. And there are 3 frequencies that don't touch each other, and that's 1, 6, and 11. And if you've ever done any wireless at home, all those access points that you get from Linksys and that you buy from Best Buy and all those companies, and you bring them home, they default to a specific radio frequency, which is usually 6. So you could immediately get into trouble if your 6 is overlapping with your neighbor's 6. So there's some interesting things going on here when you look at the amount of changes that have gone on in the 15 years that wireless has been around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 changes. 8 changes in technology in 15 years. So that's almost every 2 years. And not a whole lot of other technology changes that fast. And we're talking about ripping out everything that was B and making it A. And we're talking about ripping out everything that was A and turning it into G. This is not, I'm just going to do a firmware upgrade. That doesn't happen. So what's interesting about the wireless alphabet soup is that it gives you a pretty complex environment to work in that you have to update on a continuous, 2-year basis. If your strategy doesn't account for that, then you're going to have a network which is older than it needs to be that probably doesn't support the things that you need it to support. So some interesting things here. 802.11n is all the products that are being, both commercially and consumer-wise that are being produced today. AC is under development, but don't get your hopes up. AC is really meant for machine-to-machine sort of operation. This is a wireless machine-to-machine operation. It's not going to really be a pervasive consumer technology. But just to know that it's out there and knowing that everyone wants to go faster, better, cheaper, that's really the point here. But if you look at this, this pretty much shows you the complexities associated to these types of tools. So if we look at this, we've got older access points. We've got newer specs. So one of the things about the newer specs that against the older wireless specs is that you can use lower powered access points. So the nice thing about that is that obviously you're chewing up less energy, but you can actually, if you look at it, instead of just putting one access point in your house, you can actually put multiple access points with lower power in your house and get better coverage in your house. Or in your business, have more access points with less power. It doesn't overlap as much. It provides you with a greater flow of information and ultimately better throughput. Another challenge is your SSID, which is, if you're not familiar with that, it's called Service Set ID. It's basically the name of your network. You've got to really understand and know how many SSIDs that you have per access point, and the lower the bandwidth, you've got to look at maybe adding more SSIDs into the arena. Quality service for voice, having call admission control, supported standards. That's a big part of this. And call prioritization. What happens to a 911 call over wireless? So these are all of the challenges that we have to deal with. Not only the challenge that the technology changes every 2 years, but now we've got to look at number of access points, SSIDs, overlapping radio frequencies, changes in quality of service, and call prioritization. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of the challenges associated to BYOD. So let's look at this real quick. What do you control mobile device? Excuse me. Do you control mobile devices at your work? Do you currently have a policy in place that controls the use? Very simple question. So I'm going to give you guys a quick couple of minutes here to answer this, and we'll jump into this. And by control, I mean, do you have the ability to remotely wipe? Do you have the ability to select which applications a mobile user can have access to? Do they have identity management associated to them? So when I mean control, I mean control. So Patty, let's go ahead and see if we can't quicken the pace up here a little bit, because I've got to get a couple more through here. Let's go ahead and close the poll out, and I think I'm going to know what the answer is already, but go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, Jim, so we have 56% at yes. It's about 50-50, actually.
Okay. All right. Pretty close? Too close to call?
Yeah, 50-50.
That's actually a little bit above average. Most of the time that I'm delivering this type of content, it's usually 60-40, 70-30 no. So my hat's off to everybody on this call for having the ability to control these mobile devices and remotely wipe them and do the identity management piece, because that's a key element, and I guess that also sort of signifies, you know, the complexity associated to the problem at hand. There's still 50% of you in this call that still haven't done anything like that, and it could be that your networks just aren't that sophisticated from a control management perspective, and by that I mean you don't really need to, because your business is much simpler, right? So let's look at this. So again, the challenges, you've got profiles, usage profiles. So whenever I'm helping a company design and develop a wireless strategy, you've got to look at it from a usage profile perspective, right? You've got mobile devices, BYOD as just a mobile device. You know, they just need to be connected. They need VPN or secure tunneling services. They need to be managed. But you've also got BYOD as a data service. So if you're on a campus environment, you want to move around from campus to campus and not lose internet connectivity, that's also a strategy for BYOD. And again, if you want to look at BYOD as an enterprise voice element, then you've got to look at, obviously, voice over cellular, but you have to install a client to do that. And if you want to also do voice over Wi-Fi, again, you've got to have those soft clients, whether that's Skype, iOS, 1X from Avaya. So, and again, there you go with the licensing issues, right? So these are some of the profiles that we need to also manage to when we're looking at these solutions. And then finally, the difficulties. Look, this is, in the big scheme of things, this is an immature market. It's really 15 years old, all right, compared to, you know, 30 and 100 plus years old for voice and data networks. So it's relatively still an immature market. Originally built for data, not voice. And then you've got that refresh cycle, really no time to capitalize the investment that you're making. And again, you've got to have experience in radio frequencies. You know, you've got to understand spectrums. You've got to understand the types of radio, power management, device integration. These are all elements surrounding BYOD that you need to become proficient at. And if you look at, you know, maybe there's some alternatives to this. Okay, so maybe I don't want to manage this whole thing. So if you want to do it yourself, there's also, you know, you got to do the hardware, software. You've got to do the radio placements. You've got to put in the controllers, do all the identity management. But I'm gonna actually, you know, also offer to you a strategy that's currently in place that you can also talk to voice and data about, and that is outsourcing the support of Wi-Fi, of BYOD, right? Where you can control the cost and expense associated with this and eliminate a significant amount of the overhead associated with supporting Wi-Fi. So if you've got, so for those of you that are currently doing all the control and management on Wi-Fi, there's an interesting play here to say, why not treat Wi-Fi like your cellular service, where the company supporting you actually controls the, you know, the refreshing of equipment and actually provides connectivity and service level commitment so that you can get your business done. And then you control via a remote controller, you control the access, the security, the wiping, and all that kind of good stuff. So there's an opportunity here, and there's a lot of companies that are popping up that are doing this, and it's, to me, should be a significant decision factor for anybody that's looking to do BYOD. Right? Do it yourself or outsource, and outsourcing is becoming a bigger play. So let's take a look really quickly, this last poll question. What do you believe is the most common mobile device that you support on your network? Is it a tablet device, a smartphone device, or a laptop? So let's do this last quick poll. And if you notice, the polls are, you know, how many devices, how much control, and now what types of device. This is going to really provide some good information both to you to go back into your organization to provide, you know, some better insight into what exactly your mobile devices look like and what are you supporting. So Patty, let's go ahead and shut this one down and see where we're at right now.
Jim, we have about 50% smartphone, 50% laptop.
Ah, okay. So not too much tablets in the environment. That's interesting. Okay, well, I'm gonna basically make a statement there. Tablet devices are really in play significantly for some of their video quality from the video capabilities, which a lot of the tablet devices really haven't employed yet quite a bit. Excuse me, I said that wrong. Smartphones are employed quite a bit because of their video capabilities, because I could actually do, you know, video action point to point on smartphones a lot easier. AT&T has their service, Apple has theirs. And tablets haven't really come up to speed there yet. But as video gets deployed more in your network, you probably see more tablets. And there's obviously some applications that support tablet technologies like conferencing and collaboration, where a tablet makes a lot more sense. But interesting. So look, if your goal is, you know, so I'm going to make a little analogy here. Look, if your goal is to enable and support users, then you've got to look at this thing from this analogy, right? So your users are on the boat fishing, right? Your company, is the boat that's supporting them. And really, if you want to consider, you know, that motor, that is Wi-Fi. That's the Wi-Fi element that's enabling those people to do what they need to do. And really, the end users don't really care about the boat. They don't really care about the motors. They don't care about all the technology. They just want to do what they need to do in the day. So if your goal is trying to get people to enable them, you might want to look at deployments and management alternatives. And I think that's really the point here. There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of change. There's not much capitalization. So you could actually look at outsourcing a deployment of BYOD and support as an alternative to just doing it yourself. And I think that's ultimately the point that we wanted to make here. So I'm going to finish this thing up. I'm going to wrap it up. First of all, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. I do want to open the gate up now and see if there's any questions that you're more than welcome to ask any questions into the chat panel, or if you'd like to. So let's just take a quick second here and see if anybody's got any questions. So take a minute, if you would, and if there's any questions that you have about the technology or about the elements that I've explained today, please feel free to throw them in the chat panel, and I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to do that. And while I'm doing that, again, I'll say thank you very much for Voice and Data for sponsoring this event and for putting the information out there and for providing access to this to you guys. And again, if there's any questions that you guys have, feel free to drop them in. But I think we may have actually done a really good job of getting the information out. So I don't see any questions here, Patty. So let me hand this back to you if there's any additional elements you guys want to talk about before we drop off. Otherwise, I will just say thank you very much for your time. Patty?
Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you all for joining us today. And if you'd like some more information around BYOD, please do contact your account executive, or you can see our phone number there, and we'll promptly get you in touch with one of our executives. And at the time that you close your webinar, we do have a party questionnaire that we'd greatly appreciate you answering to help us in what you'd be interested in seeing for future webinar topics. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.